Hey, yo! Hi! Whoa.
Welcome back, folks, to another episode of the Mere Mortals podcast.
Yes.
Today we're going to be talking about zeal, being zealous about life.
Yes.
I want to talk about how to be more enthusiastic about something you have to do that you don't necessarily enjoy, the problems of being too eager, and I want to have a quick discussion to you about zeal, the fact of it, religion, and how that touches base with the definition of it as well.
Yes. I would. I'll be going deep into the religious link, a little bit about activists, and maybe some personal stuff, and what's the difference between it and fanaticism.
Okay, fantastic. Now, before we get into the definition, though,
Yes.
I'm just going to call it out, folks. This is the final episode,
The finale
of our themed
We're done.
alphabetical
We're done.
wording. So, so what you'll see probably from the next podcast onwards is we'll be doing probably less definitions. We'll be talking a little bit more broadly about just other things that come to mind, what some people have been shouting out they want us to talk about. So, you'll see it change, but it'll be all too similar still. It'll be us talking, chatting, and giving you some deep thoughts.
Yeah, it won't be too different.
Definition of zeal.
Yes.
For me, it is the dedication and enthusiasm for something. So if you have zeal, you're willing, energized, and motivated, specifically dedicated to something. So it's often used in a religious sense. I didn't go down that path. I summarized it more on the enthusiasm and eagerness as opposed to the religious side. So interested to hear your definition.
Yes. Fervour or tireless devotion for a person, cause, or ideal. Woo!
Whoa.
Gotta get some zeal going on.
You're getting cells on the microphone.
Yeah.
Dedicated to the podcast.
And determination in its furtherance is what was different to me. I actually did spit on it. That's
very
nice.
good.
So for me, it was more, I guess, yes, having that devotion for a person, cause, or ideal. So it's a bit more structured. It can still really be anything, but with that, I think it's more talking about something that's not just an object, for example. I'm not zealous about a shitty globe from Typo. It's more for a person, something more complex. And then the determination in its furtherance. So this is talking about, yes, you're really enthusiastic about something, you really care for it. Then what are you going to do about it? Well, you're going to take some steps to put it in practice in the real world.
Yeah, definitely. So I for some reason just didn't want to go and investigate down the path of the religious side. So I just thought, that's not what it is. But the more and more I think I looked at it, and from what you sort of talked about, I know previously was, it's much more on the religious side. You wouldn't use zeal in an everyday life. You wouldn't just go, oh, he's very zealous about his cleaning. It's not, it's more, while it's something, it's it seems to be more about a person, a thing, something that is aligned to something a little bit more concrete. And sometimes I would say, I guess, comparison between fanatics and being zealous.
Yes.
It's so it's sort of similar in the terms of you think of a fanatic against like a particular team or person.
Yeah.
Or
so I'd written down consumer. So we're talking about for a particular brand, for a particular sale, I guess.
Afterpay. Black Friday,
or going
Valentine's Day.
Roses. But also sports. So there's the people who, get not only like the club tattoo logoed on their chest. The badge, but they'll also get the sponsors of the club tattooed right next to it. They'll also, go to every single match. I think there was one guy I remember reading like an NFL article once who went to every single game for just 40 years straight or something ridiculous. It was just insane. And there's people out there like that who just, that's their life. Politics. So yeah, there's more, I would say this is more thinking more along the lines of revolutionary type people rather than your standard, politician in office who's just flip-flopping everywhere and doesn't really doesn't seem to have a real backbone or something. I wouldn't look at Scott Morrison and say like, damn, that's an enthusiastic dude, unless he's doing that bloody wombat waffle.
Then he's enthusiastic. Yeah. Did you have a look though with zeal, what it actually like meant in a religious sense?
Yeah, a little bit. So back in the day, in the Dizay, this is when the Romans were around. Judaism was probably on the decline. Christianity was rising up, and there was three main Jewish sects. I can't remember the three, but the fourth was the Zealots. I didn't actually know there was the Zealots themselves, and these were sort of like the hardcore ones. So I'm not sure. I think the word zeal was around before then, and it was just added on. So I don't know if there's like, I don't know. Do people call themselves Bitcoiners, for example? If there's like,
I'd say they call themselves like hodlers or mine.
My brother said this
to hodlers, today. Man. Hodlers.
I don't know what that means. He was trying to explain it to me.
It stands for like the pretense of it is just hold on. I don't know if that's what exactly it stands for or whether it's an acronym for something.
But only related to cryptos.
Yes.
Okay.
So, hodl.
Okay.
Hodl.
There we go.
Keep hodling.
I thought he was full of shit, but there we go. Apologies to my brother. So the Zealots, their main thing was only God can rule. So only God is allowed. So Romans, get out of here. Go home, Romans.
Go home, Romans.
So
go home.
If you actually type in religious zealotry or something like that, the first image on Google will be, at least it is for me, a picture of like some Jews with placards saying things like "Romans go home," yada yada.
There you go.
There you go. But yes, when I think of zealotry, we would fanaticism and zealotry, they're sort of interchangeable. I had written down fanaticism is uncritical zealotry, but I don't know. Thinking about it more, it's pretty close to the two. I would probably, thinking about it now, I would probably say, okay, yes, there's maybe not that much of a difference.
Yeah, they're the same pencil, but just maybe different colors. That's how I'd explain.
One with the wisdom, that was the shit. So, yes. So in terms of one-off encounters I've had with people, probably the only time I'd really say someone's zealous is one-off encounter with I talked about that lady of Jehovah's Witness.
Oh, yes. Yep.
I don't know. Start of coronavirus.
Sort of that missionary movement where it's like, dedication, like enthusiasm, like get onto this.
Yeah. So I actually was going to speak about this. Do you think people are becoming less zeal, have less zeal in the religious realm because I guess religions, I think in a whole, are sort of on the decline. At least in the West, they are. Would you say that the people are becoming zealous over other topics? Then, would you feel that's an adequate statement?
No, I don't think so. I don't think they're becoming. If like in total, I'd say the net would be down in terms of being zealous. If it is reducing in the West, in terms of how people are following religions, I don't imagine that they're finding something else to then tack on to that. They're just probably just reducing. They're just not being zealous at all, I guess, in that regard. And I'm being specific there on being, enthusiastic and disciplined or dedicated towards a religious sense. Maybe they are to their job or something else, but I wouldn't describe it as zealous then. Maybe just
it's not the same
passionate.
Level. Yeah.
I would say passionate or enthusiastic about your job, not dedicated above almost all else and willing to give up
your life
for this thing that you're going after.
Now that you mention it, I would say that might be a bit more correct, because how many people would walk into the gas chambers or because knowing that they're going to go in there, like they could lie, they could say they're not Jews, they could renounce their faith or whatever, but they go, nah,
this is above all else. Yeah, exactly.
And how many people would do that nowadays? A good question.
I'd probably say a lot more people now would be more.
Would you walk into the gas chambers for your Porsche? Would you walk into the gas chambers for? I mean, some people might.
Are you a hodler out there and you'd fucking do it for your bitcoins?
For the bitcoins.
Don't.
For your moon, what does my brother have? He's got something called like moonshine or something.
Oh, mate.
It's so
Cardano.
It's so
Ethereum.
Have you heard of moonshine?
Moonshine.
It's so
Litecoin. Bitcash, mate.
Bitcoin Cash.
Bitcoin Cash, mate. I know plenty of them, folks.
Yeah.
There's no cryptocurrency though. What we are talking about is being too eager. So if you're too eager about cryptocurrencies, if you're too eager about some other things, I'm going to talk about eagerness, because that's why I enjoyed the zealous portion. So take the religious side of it out, just expand on the enthusiasm.
Yes.
But what happens when you're too far down the path, too far down the rabbit hole? Because you could be way too zealous. And part of that is being too eager. So what's the problems of being too eager? Desperate.
Yes.
Reek desperation. Have you ever been on a date, folks? You're on a date, you're sitting in front of this beautiful girl, and all you want to do is do all you can for her to go back home with you.
Yes.
Like you're super desperate, and it's coming out of you. The testosterone is pumping, adrenaline's going, you're sweating, knees weak, mum spaghetti. It's going wild. No, so if you get desperate, it's probably because you're being too eager. And you see the opposite side when you're just chatting with friends, or you're in a group that you understand or you're familiar with. You lose that eagerness, and the desperation of whatever it is that you're trying to achieve kind of goes away. So that's sort of one of the things that can come out of it, being too eager. Another one is more work related, throwing your co-workers under the bus. I wouldn't go as far as saying that you're too zealous, but if you're too eager about something, and I saw this personally, both myself and other people back in the day, everyone was just caring about moving up to the next level, getting to that next pay rate, whatever it may be. And you didn't care about the bodies you left strewn behind in your wake. It was just like, nah, doesn't matter. I'm going to get there. It's interesting though, because, you think about it like 10 years later, and if you're all still there and you're working together, you've wanted to like build a good bond relationship that's probably like all damaged and in tatters by then.
I was just going to say, is that company still doing well, 10 years on from when you were there?
Yes, but it's just because they're so bloated with people. So if you can imagine that, so something like this was happening in a company where they expected there to be 20% of people leaving year on year at a particular group level. And that group level was like 100,000 people.
Yeah.
So when you have, 20,000 of these people leaving, you kind of surmise that the ones who were going ahead, it's like that bottom 20% that are just like kicking out, like, oh, well, dejected, bring more people in. So everyone who might be sticking around is kind of happy because they are getting the positive, and everyone who got rejected or whatever it may be out of this being thrown on the side or under the bus, like, okay, well, I'm not doing this anymore. See you later.
Yeah. I'm just wondering if, in terms of productivity as a whole, if, making your co-workers look bad or backstabbing them or actively sabotaging their work.
Oh, it can't be.
As a company.
Oh, it can't be. No, it can't be good in the micro. I think in the macro, it just gets lost in there and gets swallowed up and by other things.
Yeah,
so,
okay. There you go.
As other things too.
There you go.
My last one of just being too eager. Expecting rewards or compliments constantly. So I don't see this for someone who is zealous. Because I think if you're zealous, you're not necessarily caring for rewards. So I'm just thinking a missionary or someone who is really devoted to God. I mean, for them, maybe the reward is that you really hope that you'll end up one day in heaven or something to that regard.
Well, that's what it is. That's
if you want to turn it down to the everyday life, that eagerness is that, when you're expecting rewards or compliments constantly for a lot of things that you're doing because you're so wanting to help out and do some things that you're almost pushing it to the point like, oh, well, you got to thank me. Like you got to, I'm doing all these things. So you must be looking at me and showcasing what you're doing. So there's probably part of that in being zealous, but it's taken to, maybe the ultimate boundary, which is probably life and death in that regard. So, I had a couple of other things though with enthusiasm or eagerness, but I want to hear about personal zealousy.
Yeah. Well, I didn't get too deep into this actually, because I was thinking, what is there anything that you would say you've become zealous over? There's, I don't think there's anything where I've been willing to die for that's been so important that I'm going to put my body on the line.
Yeah, like the word devotion, like when you're so devoted for something and enthusiastic for something and dedicated, but you would never put something above yourself. I don't think that currently exists in my life. Maybe I could imagine that becoming something like your kids. Like if you had kids and then you're almost experiencing this like, okay, well, they're almost more important. But again, you don't devote your life to them. Some people do. Now, some people do. And I would say, okay, well, that you're being zealous. Now, is it a great thing or a good thing? Like, I don't know. It can be. I'm not one to say. Some people turn out to be pretty amazing. Some people don't. I think there's a story of, I can't remember this guy's name, but it was in Russia and it was a long time. It was like in his 50s or 60s, I believe. And he pretty much dedicated or devoted his time to making sure his 2 or 3 girls pretty much became all
the 3 girls.
Like grandmasters, chess masters, and they were all that when they were super young.
He was basically practicing what's that bloody word that genetic that's gonna bug me. What Hitler was doing back in the day, where it's like, you kill off all the weak, you kill off the poor, and
now I know what you're talking about, but it's bugging me
whatever.
too. Folks, if you know what it is, shout it out.
Eugenics. That's
there
what it is.
Go, eugenics.
So I think he had this theory. He wrote this book. I saw this on bloody Reddit not too long ago, where he was saying, if you get 2 really smart people and create some babies, and then
smart babies,
bring those babies up in a certain way, you can create geniuses. And I think he did an okay job in a sense, because he created like I think the first woman grandmaster to beat the world number 1 at the time, which is like, okay, well, that's pretty good. I think the other 2 kids were pretty smart as well, but what was their childhood like? I don't know. Maybe it was good. Maybe it was.
There are extremes to being zealous, but that's the only time that I could imagine, that stream of becoming zealous about something. Personally, that would be the only thing. I don't know if you can think of another thing.
I mean, look,
like I'm not going to be devoted to a team, like a soccer team.
That's not happening. That's I'd say most of the ones that I listed before, which you could sort of get into.
You wouldn't be zealous. The one thing that you could, and I guess I would almost tie to patriotism, would be if you're zealous about your country. Yeah. So you could be like, I could imagine some people saying this and being like, oh well, under that definition, dedication or enthusiasm for something, energize that. You could say you are devoted to your country. Yeah. Whether it comes to war, whether it comes to caring about it, whatever it may be.
Is that something you can personally see yourself going down?
I can't see it.
Yeah, fuck Australia.
Can't see it.
Colombia.
Yeah, well, not even that. It's not in the like. I couldn't see myself being to the extreme of being so devoted in that way for the country. Maybe for an ideal. Could you be zealous for an ideal?
Yeah.
Okay.
Fervour or tireless devotion for a person, cause, or ideal.
Yeah, maybe an ideal. Maybe actually that would be the closest thing. That I'd be zealous about some ideal. Probably about discipline. I don't know. Some random thing where it'd just be like, I'm zealous about that.
Yeah.
Zealous about the Jocko podcast, something like that.
You're pretty
it's extreme as it gets for those things.
Pretty close, man.
Okay. Would you think there's any others for you? Anything different there?
Yeah, no, look, I'm never willing to rule anything out. I've read enough, seen enough that basically anyone I feel is capable of anything given the right circumstances, and I don't know what circumstances will come for me in my life.
Well, I'm going to say I haven't listened to enough Jordan Peterson, read enough Jordan Peterson, and he can be a very polarizing man. But one thing I've been reading about lately that he pointed out, it was looking at something kind of the opposite way, and it reminded me of this. Of some people think it's like, how unbelievable was it that this person was so bad, like a Hitler. But I like the other words, like, no, actually, it's a miracle that most people aren't like this. And it's actually pretty true in terms of when you think about it, like everybody is capable of, malevolence and evil very easily, like very, very easily. And it's actually a miracle that not a lot of us are freaking doing that.
Yeah.
Like if you compare it back to like old school days, Stone Age, if people wanted to kill you, they're going to kill you. Like they're just going to kill you. That's cool. Like there's no laws about it or whatever. So it's an absolute miracle that we don't do a lot more harm to each other than we do right now.
Yeah, for sure. I want to talk a little bit about activists. So
activists.
In the past, I've changed my mind on 2 things probably within the past couple of years. One, probably about a year ago, was Jordan Peterson actually helped convince me otherwise of this, where I was rather disdainful of academics, like people living in the ivory tower. This was, I guess, back in the days when I cared about identity politics, when I cared about the culture wars, when I cared about that stuff.
Didn't even realize you cared about it.
You
were interested or cared?
Yeah, interested. Maybe I didn't personally
intrigued. Okay.
Yeah, didn't personally know someone real deep into it. I've met people real deep into it, into that realm, but I've never myself was like learning about it to go out and fight in the wars and discuss these things. It was more like, okay, what's going on? Why is this stuff happening? Sort of stuff. And yeah, I was sort of rather disdainful of academics, but I've changed my mind a little bit on that. I think there's a place for them, but the universities and as a whole, we'll see how they hold up in the future. I think there's some changes coming for that. And another one is activists, because I've probably really only seen the worst of them. And this is where I'm talking about those jackasses who erect like a tent thing in the middle of like the busiest road, Howe Street overpass in Brisbane, block traffic for 2 or 3 hours on a busy Friday morning.
Yeah, and just mess it up for everything else.
Yeah. And there's actually, just watch your phone, man. Whoop. There's actually a book I'm just starting to read now, Peter Singer's Ethics into Action. And he's, I was a bit surprised by this book because I've read one of his others and I was expecting a certain style from him. But this one is actually talking about a guy called Henry Spira. And he did something, I'm only a third of the way through the book. So I've only got a bit of a taste of what he's about.
Yeah.
But he was pretty big into, really the animal liberation movement towards the end. That's where he really focused on. And it was sort of like, if you get things done correctly, then I can get on board with the activism and whatnot. I'm probably never going to be one myself out there chaining myself to the trees, to the
koalas.
Yeah.
Chain yourself to a koala.
Chain
a koala to you.
Yeah, that'll help.
This actually, I've got to interject here. Actually, no, I'll let you finish that thought.
Yeah. Look, I don't personally see myself, holding the microphone, shouting and whatnot. But they were talking about how this guy would do certain things, and there was stuff that he wouldn't cross a boundary to get the word out, I suppose. Right. And he also was very, very critical about, is this pragmatic? Is this actually helping? So he would look at those people, blocking traffic on the freeway and probably say, look, you're getting some attention, but is that actually doing anything? Peter, yes, you got naked women, topless women running around. Is that actually helping the animals though? That sort of stuff. Yeah. So
no, I before we get off the topics, I just wanted to share this with you because I don't know if you've seen it. You might not have. So obviously we're talking about animal welfare and the like. I'd like to give a big shout out to the ASX stock people, the Australian Wall Street. They've been, it's interesting. They've been all adopting koalas, every single one of them. So it was like this big thing, like the theme of Reddit and the Wall Street people. It's like, if we're going to do it, everyone does it. And I don't know who came up with this, but they were just like, let's all adopt koalas as like a thing of giving back with the money they've made.
Like big companies. You're talking the banks. You're talking about.
No. I'm talking like a random Redditor just adopting a koala, with a certificate, and so like you just go into this page and like everyone's adopting koalas and they're making like mad koala memes. Like first comes the koalas, then comes the powers, and it's like Homer Simpson with a bat and shit like that. So I was like, so big shout out to that's good activism. That is good activism.
Yeah.
Keep it up, Redditors. But no,
potentially that's where it's like, okay, if someone, what happens if their stonks go down and then they
sell the koala, they can't afford to feed the koala. But the thing, actually, you crushed it on the point on zealous and how effective is it in your zealousy. So like imagine that you're really dedicated, you're devoted, you're enthusiastic about something. Now here it could be activism, maybe it's God, something else. But you're right, like how effective is it that you're doing? Because sometimes you can just be going out and parading as an activist, and you are dedicated and you're devoted, but you're being like the least effective you could possibly be at that act. But you're being blinded by your full devotion and your enthusiasm of doing it, that you don't step back and think, okay, well actually there's other ways that you could think about this. I had a conversation with someone recently about this. There was a couple of walks lately over in Canberra, in Australia, in Brisbane and other places. And it was for a cause, right? I'm not going to talk about what the cause is. But regardless of the cause, it always makes me think, if you have 5,000 people all taking 3 hours, and let's imagine they're really, I'm not going to say all of them are zealous, but maybe some of them are zealous towards that particular activity. Now, if you imagine that they spent 3 hours doing that, plus however many people they impacted and all the things. Imagine if all that time was put into something effective to combat that particular issue at hand. Like the effectiveness would be like, who knows, multiplied by what level, of actually doing something. But instead, it's one of those where everyone feels enthusiastic, energized, they're taking part of it, and they get on the news, and then they hear about it, and then maybe a week later, just as anything else, it just kind of gets pushed out for another thing or another thing that comes along. But I think people are almost happy to pat themselves in the back at that level. But if you really truly looked at it logically, go, like, what was the change? Like, what was the change here? Sometimes there is. So I'm not going to say it's not never, but often the case, it can be like, there's better ways to be using maybe your zealousy, if you want to think about it that way. I could imagine that that's the same thing with people who are like, say, missionaries, where you might think that, you know, if you're really devoted and you got to do all these things, and maybe you got to go talk to, like, the least effective thing. Just go and talk to like one person for 20 years and go to his house every day, being like, come on, you gotta get on. Come on, I know you never want to move. So that's the same amount of devotion as maybe, you know, going out to the community, helping out, volunteering, and at the same time trying to get people on board. I think both of them, you're doing the same devotion and enthusiasm, that maybe one's more effective and maybe provides more value to people. And the other one, man, you got one annoyed dude who's just like, please go away.
Yeah, for sure. There's people's actions matter much more than their intent. For me nowadays, that's it's probably like 90-10. What they're actually doing compared to what the emotion and sentiment behind it is, and that's probably, you know, always judge people's actions over their words. That maxim's around because it's bloody true. Yeah. And
mine would even go more, not in the intent, but I'd say when it comes to words, I'd say it's like 95-5. Like, I almost just don't even care what people are saying, as long as they're like, unless there's action, like, it's just like, see you later.
Yeah. This book's actually pretty good for that, because he talks about how he lives, like how his boots on the ground, like he lives out his convictions. He goes to, there was in particular one story about they were testing on animals in I think it was a New York museum. I should probably actually check that. And basically in cats in particular. So the NMU, which is, bloody hell.
NMU.
Yeah, I think it's like the New York Museum.
I'm going to say it's North Massachusetts.
This is where I'll go to the back and see.
This is where you use the
NMU, the National Maritime Union. That's not right.
Jeez.
Anyhow,
get your indexes right, folks.
It was a museum, and they were testing on cats, and basically they were testing on what would happen to cats' reproductive, like, fertility, and what their actions were after they blinded them, after they put lesions on their brain, after they just did all these terrible things to these poor cats. And there was no real reason behind it. There was no real, we're doing this because we're trying to improve the lives of cats in general, because we're trying to, test out a cure that maybe would save human lives. No, there wasn't really anything behind it.
It was just fuck with cats.
Yeah, they were fucking cats back before the doco. And he basically just every single weekend for, I think it was like a year or something, he would just be out there organizing the protests. And then during the week, he'd be doing all the stuff behind the scenes, sending out pamphlets, going, just crazy things, but a crazy amount of work, but never really, forcing people in a uncomfortable way to get involved with it. It was always like, he was pushing the line for sure, like intruding in on people's consciousness and thought, but he did it in a way where I was like, mad respect to this dude. I like, as far as activists go, and I'm only a third, so I don't know all the details, but pretty cool. Okay. Pretty cool.
From one thing you pointed at, the don't fuck with cats. Did you watch that documentary?
Yeah, I finished it. Yep.
There you go. What do you see? That's an interesting point there, because I wouldn't say that there were zealous, but you can get pretty close. But he was pretty fanatical about himself.
Yeah, actually, he's a
and critically too. Like, he was zealous about himself, as in, like, he was disciplined, and like he just thought he was like the best thing ever, basically, and he just kind of like wanted other people to know that, improve it.
Yeah.
But then on the other side, all these people trying to find him were just like devoted to finding him, like 2 years, 3 years on Facebook, and trying to find all the details they were finding to figure it out. It's like, there's a fucking corner of the building here that should be like this corner or stuff like that.
Yeah, this vacuum cleaner is only sold in like Russia and
I thought they were playing geolocation or something, but whatever it's called. Was it
GeoGuessr?
GeoGuessr, yeah. I thought they were playing GeoGuessr. Yeah, that's a pretty messed up.
They'd probably be pretty good at that game, eh?
Yes. Anything else from you? Good sir on Zeal.
That's it for me.
Look, folks, I don't want you to be zealous, but I want you to be fanatical. Okay. I want you to be energized, excited about something. What should they be excited about and energized?
You're going to do the mere mortal moment?
Oh, I forgot about the mere... Well, that's what you're going to be excited about, the mere mortal moment.
Yes.
Let's do it.
All right, mine is, I empathize with the calves of all runners. They get a real shit go of it. How does this relate to zeal and zealotry?
Yeah.
Well, I think...
It does not.
Yeah.
Surprise.
I think I could make a case that some of the hardcore runners, you know, I'm talking ultra marathoners or just marathoners who are really, really good, you know, sub 2.5 hours. I would love to see, you remember that movie Sausage Fest? I would love to see like a version of that, but dedicated to just body parts of people and you know, what they think of all this ridiculous shit that's going on.
Yeah.
And I reckon the calves probably get the worst go of it. None of the calves of runners are looking like beefy and meaty. They're all like thin, starvation mode, barely getting on.
There you go. Mine is religious. Success is due less to your ability, rather your zeal. So I feel like this extends obviously if it isn't religious, but a lot of the times ability counts for very little than your zeal and more like dedication and your eagerness to actually do so. And I mean, so I compare it to something that I do know about, just say gym or going to the gym or the fact of working out. You could be, top 10% genetics, but if you don't have the devotion or the dedication to go to the gym, well, tough luck. Like that's not going to happen. So there you go. Okay, well, now that I messed that up, so I'm going to go for round 2.
Yeah.
If you're eager to listen to the mere mortals, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, Karen, what do the folks do?
Yes, they're going to go to our Instagram and they're going to check out what we've got there. There's a mix of spatterings and they can go, ooh, I really like the book reviews. I'm going to go to either the book review YouTube or I'm going to go to the Mere Mortals book review audio specifically just for you. Book reviews right there, Mere Mortals book reviews. Type it in. And then we also have the Mere Mortals standard audio as well. And
I believe we're not on Stitcher.
Stitcher, wherever.
In the book reviews. I think it was there.
We're not everywhere. We're still not everywhere.
Okay. We will there eventually. If you're listening to this...
Look, if they're not listening...
That's true. If you're not listening to this and you want it to be but if you're listening to this somehow... and you wanted us to be somewhere else and you want to listen to it.
If you're looking over the corner of the cool guy on the bus, seeing Mere Mortals on his YouTube.
And you can see us like pointing, being go get it. Then you know what to do.
Then you know what to do now.
Subscribe, like, do all the good things, folks. That's it.
Please.
Mere Mortals, one out.
Going out.
Woo!